Hello guys, welcome to today's video. I'm Dr. Tabat, and in today's video I will be reacting to an article by BBC. The title of the article is "Exploited Foreign Doctors Worry About Risk to UK Patients." If you are a Nigerian doctor currently in Nigeria that want to relocate to the UK or to any foreign country, this will catch your fancy. And as usual, the link will be in the description section so that you read it on your own, and I will give my 2 cents at the end of the video. Without further ado, let's dive into today's video. Doctors recruited from some of the world's poorest countries to work in UK hospitals say they are being exploited and believe they are so overworked they fear putting patients' health at risk. Yeah, this is true. There is a limit to which you can work. You need to properly rest. Your mind and your body need to rest so that you be in the best place to be able to make the best decisions. The exhausted mind can make plenty wrong calls, and as a medical doctor, this could cost patients their lives. And yes, so overworking health workers is not good for not just the health worker but also the patients generally and the hospital in the long run. But this happens, it really happens. A BBC investigation has found evidence that doctors from Nigeria, are being recruited by a British healthcare company and expected to work in private hospitals under conditions not allowed in the NHS. This is not a recruitment by the NHS. The British Medical Association, BMA, has described the situation as shocking and says the sector needs to be brought in line with NHS working practices. The BBC has spoken to several foreign medics, including a young Nigerian doctor who worked at a private Northfield Health Leeds Hospital in 2021. Augustine Enekwechi says his hours were extreme, on call 24 hours a day for a week at a time, and that he was unable to leave the hospital grounds. He says working there felt like being in a prison. The tiredness was so intense, he says, there were times he worried he couldn't properly function. Wow, this is much. On call 24 hours a day for a week is a long time. If you're not familiar with what it means for a week to be on call, is that when you're on call, you stay back in the hospital to work for the extra hours. So usually we work from maybe 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. In Nigeria, we work from 8 to 4. So between that time, everybody comes to work. That's during the weekdays. So if you're on call during the weekday, you start your call from 4 till 8 the following morning, and by 8 the following morning you resume work again. So that means if today is a Tuesday and I am on call today, I'll go to work from home before 8 a.m. I should start work by 8 a.m. and then after 4 I would remain in the hospital till 8 a.m. the following day, which I will now continue work until 4 p.m. on Wednesday before I leave for home. That's huge. That's really huge. And you're working all through. You're likely not to really sleep per se, because most times when you're on call, you don't really sleep. I think the longest time I've spent on call was during my housemanship, and it's similar to this. I spent about a week, and mine was a miracle as at that time, because most of my colleagues spent longer than that when they were in a particular department. I'm not going into details for that. 2 of them spent 6 weeks in the hospital without leaving. They were working 24/7 and nights were busy. This is how the condition usually is. So it's not as if in Nigeria we're actually faring better per se, especially if you're in an active medical training like residency. Sleep is not someone you know, sleep is a stranger. So this is really extreme, that for 1 week you are spending 1 week all through in the hospital and you can't go out. That's really extreme. Patients' lives are in danger. This is just too much. I know that working tired puts the patients at risk and puts myself also at risk. Yes. As well for litigations, he says, I felt powerless, helpless, constant stress and thinking something could go wrong. Yes, it's been shown that losing sleep can make you not even do simple maths. And imagine when you need to calculate the dose of drugs for patients, when you need to make some certain calls like that, and you're this exhausted. Definitely, you're going to make the wrong calls that will cost patients their lives or cost them some certain problems, and you're likely to be sued. And doctors being reported, it's not something funny. A lot of doctors had committed suicide or become depressed as a result of them being reported to the health governing or regulatory body. Usually it's not really a good sight per se. So you're now put in a situation that you're likely going to face this. It's not good at all. Nuffield Health disputes those working hours, saying its doctors are offered regular breaks, time off between shifts, and the ability to swap shifts if needed. The company added that the health and well-being of patients and health team members is its priority. Augustine was hired out to Nuffield Health Leeds Hospital from a private company, NES Healthcare. It specializes in employing doctors from overseas, many from Nigeria, and using them as resident medical doctors or RMOs, living doctors found mainly in the private sector. Augustine says he was so excited to be offered a job that he barely looked at the NES contract. In fact, it opted him out of legislation that protects UK workers from excessive working hours, the Working Time Directive, and left him vulnerable to a range of punishing salary deductions. Wow, really wow. So obviously the NES is the company hiring those people. I think for those wanting to go to the UK, you should be quite careful about this. Don't allow the excitement like that of Augustine to make you not to read the contract, and also be able to discuss with those working in the UK, those that have already moved to the UK. It's very important you discuss with them. They're going to help you. They understand the system, so they're going to guide you properly concerning this. Sit down and read this contract. It's very important. He didn't do that because he was excited to move to the UK, and I understand the excitement, but this had put him in jeopardy, and he couldn't really rescue himself from some of the problems that could have been avoided if he worked with the NHS. Augustine is far from alone. The BMA and the Frontline Lobbying Group, the Doctors Association, has given the BBC's File on 4 and Newsnight exclusive access to the findings of a questionnaire put to 188 resident medical officers. Most of the doctors were employed by NES, but some were with other employers. It found that 92% had been recruited from Africa and mostly 81% were from Nigeria. The majority complained about excessive working hours and unfair salary deduction. For years now, the World Health Organization has warned against the active recruitment of doctors and nurses from developing countries with severe shortage of medical personnel. The WHO has compiled a list of 47 such countries, most of them in Africa. The UK government has incorporated that list into its own code of practice, calling it the Red List. In effect, it makes Nigeria a no-go destination for British medical recruiters. I'm sure many of our Nigerian colleagues will not be happy about this, because quite a lot of us want to live. The conditions are better than what we find in our country. Hello. So how did the doctors come to be working in the UK in the first place? We traveled to Nigeria and witnessed another troubling side to this story. In an exam hall in Lagos, the country's biggest city, we found hundreds of doctors queuing to take what is called a Professional and Linguistic Assessment Board Test, or PLAB-1. The paper is set by the GMC in London and is the first step required by the British Medical Authority to secure a license to work in the UK. So yes, usually as a doctor you're licensed together with other health workers, and you cannot work in another country that you don't have the licensure. So some countries recognize your license so you can work without needing another license, but most times you would have to sit for their licensing exams to pass and be qualified to practice medicine in such countries. So yes, you cannot practice as a medical doctor with a Nigerian license in the UK. You must sit for the PLAB exams, and after you've passed, you now are properly licensed to work. And in Nigeria, hundreds are queuing for the PLAB 1 exam. So that means that even Augustine's state as it is someone's promised land. It's just bad. It shows you how the home is already. The doctors we spoke to said they were attracted by the potential of higher salaries and better working conditions. The event was being overseen by staff from the British Council, an organization sponsored by the Foreign Office. I think this is a picture of doctors that are queuing to write the PLAB exams. Yes, there's a description below the picture. In Lagos, doctors queue to take PLAB 1 exams. The first step towards getting them a license to work in the UK. The JMC also offers the exam in several other red list countries: Ghana, Sudan, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Both the JMC and British Council deny they are involved in active recruitment and say they are simply helping provide a service for doctors wanting to come to the UK independently, something that is allowed under this guideline. In Augustine's case, he was studying for the second part of those PLAB exams in the UK when he was approached by the NES Healthcare and later offered a visa sponsorship and a potential job. While that does appear to have been active recruitment, NES say it wasn't, because it is not a recruitment agency and as such only engages with doctors from overseas once they have already committed to practice in the UK. But the Department of Health and Social Care told us the UK Code of Practice did apply to NES, so the company was in breach of it. We spoke to several African doctors recruited in this way by NES. They all had similar stories about what the terms and conditions of their contract meant in reality once they had been hired out to private UK jobs. Dr. Femi Johnson was sent to a different hospital to Augustine, but says he was also expected to work 14 to 16 hours days and then be on call overnight. I was burned out, he said. I was tired, I needed sleep. It's not humanly possible to do that every day for 7 days. But when he needed a break because he was too exhausted to continue, NES were entitled to deduct money from his salary. The company said this is to cover the cost of finding a replacement doctor. But Femi says it leaves NES doctors in terrible dilemma. In situations like this, I always make that internal discussion with my inner self. Femi, are you doing right by yourself? Or are you doing right by the patient? He tells us. Unfortunately, I haven't always been able to answer that question. This just shows you the heart of an average medical doctor. The first concern he's having is for the patient before his. And it's sad that this is being exploited by many bodies to their advantage. It's just really, really depressing. Some NES doctors have received help from Dr. Jenny Vaughan from the Doctor Association. She received many complaints from resident medical officers and says the UK healthcare system has developed into 2 tiers, one for NHS doctors, the other for international recruits working in private sectors. NHS doctors can only be scheduled to work up to 48 hours and if they request, up to 72 hours a week. No doctor in the NHS does more than 4 nights consecutively because we know that it is frankly not safe, says Dr. Vaughan. This is a slave type work with excess hours and the likes of which we thought had been gone 30 years ago. It is not acceptable for patients. For patient safety reasons, it is not acceptable for doctors. We took our findings to the BMA and its deputy chair, Emma Runswick. She told us the situation was a disgrace to UK medicine. Our international colleagues have come a long way to the UK and have found conditions so exploitative it beggars belief. NES Healthcare told us that our feedback about doctors' experience with the company was extremely positive. It says it provides doctors with a safe and supportive route to pursue their career choice in the NHS and in the UK healthcare system more generally, and that their work is of great benefit to the British company. So the doctors are complaining, more than one doctor is complaining, and the NES is denying it. I have a colleague that works with the NES, and yes, she told me that right before this became news. She told me about her working condition. I was really sad for her. And that's extreme. Where I currently work, I work about 40 hours a week, 8 hours every day for 5 days, and I have my weekend, which is really okay for me to rest. But imagine working for up to 72 hours. Doctors in training work for up to 80 hours, sometimes more than 100 hours a week. And imagine the danger this poses to patients and the doctors themselves. This is what happens. People are being exploited. Because they really want to live, because their homes are bad, they now move from frying pan to fire, per se. And this could be avoided if these homes that are on red list will improve the standard. Yes, many Nigerians want to live, that's it, because it's not as if the home is even doing well, per se. If this is being improved, I'm telling you, a lot of Nigerians that are abroad will want to come back and also contribute, because the government sponsored to a certain extent our medical training, but then they are losing us. So this is one of the things that the head of service was also pointing out in a previous video I had done about warning Nigerian doctors not to leave, because it's not as if the grass is always greener on the other side. But many times you're just like choosing between bad and worse. Not really any of them is good, but you just choose the less severe case to the terrible one. And many times they see that living is always better than staying back at home. I just hope that this improves. I really hope this improves. So to doctors that are relocating, before you relocate, please ask a lot of questions. Ask those around to guide you properly so that you don't fall into such traps. I knew that before I relocated, I asked people that were in the country about the experience so far, and they properly guided me. That has helped me to settle down quickly. So there are more Nigerians in the UK. You can reach out to them to ask these kind of things, and it's going to help. I really hope that this slavery work we are doing now, it stops. So guys, prepare well. It's not about living. You have to prepare how you live too, so that you wouldn't really move from frying pan to fire. So that's the end for today's video. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. Please don't forget to like this video and share it. And if you're yet to subscribe, please subscribe and turn on the bell notification. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video.